Woo! It is I, the Theosaurus Rex, and I am here for the astounding, amazing Riding with Rex series. We're continuing. Long story short, I do this all in one take, or sometimes I don't like what I do, and I redo it, and then I redo it, and then I realize, I'm already home. Because I'm taking this from the Christian Commute. What that gentleman does is he, on the drive home, he does his talk thing. So he does it all in one take. He takes little notes. I'm not doing that yet. So mine tend to be a little bit shorter. Anyway, today I wanted to talk real quick about my thoughts on Star Trek Discovery. Not necessarily a pro or con, although, full disclosure, I think it's a terrible representation of Star Trek. I don't think it should be called Star Trek Discovery. I think they should have just made their own show, because it's nothing to the ideals of it. Now, with that said, here's what I want to talk about. I want to look at one of the things that I think, Star Trek Discovery has taken a lot of flack for being overly political. And so whenever I would mention that on my personal Facebook or on Twitter at Theosaurus Rex, I'd get pushback saying, "Oh, well, Star Trek's an inherently political show. They had the first interracial kiss, and it also, look at the diversity on the helms and stuff like that." And I really was struggling with like a response to that, because I don't feel that the way that Star Trek Discovery is being diverse, and the political motivations behind some of it is the same thing. So here's kind of what I'm saying. So in Star Trek Discovery, it's focusing on a black female, first black female lead in all of Star Trek, yay! Okay, whatever. When DS9 had Benjamin Sisko, there wasn't the huge fanfare like, it's the first black captain, yay! Anyway, and then the fact that, you had an Asian lady as the captain of a ship, yay! Girl power! And then you have the first openly gay couple on Star Trek Discovery, yay! Wow, these are so progressive. Oh, and the Klingons are fashioned after Trump supporters. Yay! It's very progressive. Okay. These are petty political things, in my opinion, that are below what Star Trek should be. And here's why I say that. In the original series, and all throughout Star Trek, they focused on philosophy over politics. And there's quite a distinction. When you look at political things, you're taking typically about a political movement. So in the case of the Klingons being fashioned after Trump supporters, they threw out the whole culture based on honor and war, and making them a lot kind of like, almost like Vikings going towards Valhalla, whose their ideal version of heaven is what most people would consider hell. They made them about purity and race and not wanting to be involved with others. They don't like outsiders. They don't like people that aren't like them and stuff like that. Very stereotypical, based on Trump voters, as the one of the writers even said. Okay, that's tolerable. And that's the political thing, because it's based off something for a particular time. Now, the original Star Trek series would go based on an overarching philosophy that things would apply to over time. So as an example, Gene Roddenberry believed in a utopian future where we would get past, we wouldn't have really an idea we wouldn't have religion, we wouldn't have an idea of nationalities. It didn't matter, because we would all be one human race, which is very different, for the record, than making a big deal out of someone being something because of the race. And we would all go towards things. And so in that utopian ideal, that philosophy, it didn't matter that you had Chekhov, who was Russian, being there in the midst, or right before or during this Cold War era. Like, they didn't pick him, oh, this guy's Russian, let's pick him because we want to talk about the fact that the Russians are our friends. No, the whole thing was, the overall philosophy was that it didn't matter your nationality because it was the Federation and they were past that point. Another example, if you will. In the original series, there's an episode, which I saw recently. The BBC plays like the original Star Treks and whatnot, where you had one group of people, you had two people who were at war, and one of them had white on the right side of their face and black on the left side of their face, and the other people had black on the right side of their face and white on the left side of their face. So they were opposites in that way. A very clear analogy politically could be drawn about the fact that racism is stupid because of it. But here's where, if you were to focus on the political aspect of it, that racism is bad, that you miss the overarching philosophical aspect. And that philosophical aspect being making judgments based on arbitrary things that people can't handle is dumb. So see how by focusing on race, we cheapen the overarching thing, right? And the second thing that it does is, if we were to focus on the political aspect of it, you do something that can divide people. Whereas if we, by focusing on the philosophical, I'm trying to make a left-hand turn. Whereas focusing on the philosophical benefits and overall philosophical ideals, we don't run into an area. Whoa! Okay, sorry. But focus on the philosophical ideals, we don't run the risk of offending anybody because we're focusing on these ideals. Like in terms of Chekhov, we didn't have to worry about offending the Russians and talking bad about the people who were Russians, the good people that were just stuck in the USSR. We didn't have to worry about offending them because we weren't saying, oh, Russians, wow, this is weird. Back in the 60s, huge racial tension. You weren't talking about, oh, the people with the blacks are bad. And then the other people who were white, oh, these things are bad. Because it wasn't dividing people. Because to some people who are racist, they might say, well, yes, you are inherently bad because of the darker skin, because of the melanin in your skin. And other people might say, like racists today especially, oh, because you have lighter skin, you are inherently racist and you are wrong. Right? And so if they would have just stuck it with the race thing and made one race black, one race right, one race white, it's an easy turnoff to people. But by focusing on the philosophical aspect of it, that everyone is equal regardless of your nationality, regardless of your accent, regardless of the way you look, and that we shouldn't judge people as inferior based on arbitrary traits that they can't control or handle. Like that, it speaks to much more people. And then so you tell someone who's a racist and they hear that and they're like, yeah, you shouldn't judge people. Oh crap, what have I? No, now I can't be racist anymore. Logic, And I'm not saying it's that easy to convince someone to not be dumb, but just over and over and over, you see Star Trek doing the ideal philosophy that everyone can relate to, that everyone can get around that idea. And then you've got the new one where they're being pretty divisive, right? A lot of people I know who are avid Star Trek fans don't even want to check it out because they're being so blatantly political. So, anyway, I just think that there's a huge thing. And if you take it off of Star Trek and you take it onto like any of these topics, and one of the things that I like to do, even though I'm coming from a Christian point of view and whatever, I like to focus on those truths that are better. So I don't call myself a feminist, even though, because feminism is the strive for equality between men and women and social economic justice, all that, whatever. Because to me, there's a greater truth. There's the fact that you shouldn't judge people based on, their gender. You shouldn't judge people based on the color of their skin. You judge people based on who they are, what they're doing, the choices they make. Those are better things to judge someone on than, the color of their skin or whatever. I try to go to that overarching philosophical ideal. In part because I believe Christianity pushes towards that. Christianity argues that all men, all women, all people, regardless of whatever, anyone who is a human has inherent value and worth for two reasons. Number one, because we were made in the image of God. It's also known, I think it's Latin, they call it the imago Dei. We're made in the image of God. Therefore, for me to hate someone, for me to treat someone different based on something they can't control, race, gender or whatever, is ridiculous. Secondly, the other thing is the fact that, as I'm not a Calvinist, but I believe that Jesus died for everyone. And if Jesus dies for everyone, and we all have inherent worth because we are made in the image of God, how can I hate someone based on these things? And really, the whole thing of hating someone based on even their choices can create issues when you look at the fact that Jesus died for them in the same way that he died for you, same way he died for me. So even though I've never murdered anybody, I haven't done anything worthy of a felony, it's still something that Jesus died for me, and he died for Hitler. And so he died for Donald Trump. He died for Hillary Clinton. Whoever you want to say, whatever political figure you think is evil, you think is wrong, whatever. He died for them in the same way that he died for you. And so that gives them continued value. You don't forfeit your value that you initially had just because you've done wrong things. Anyway, cool. That was fun. I really enjoyed that, and it made my drive home even easier. This was the Theosaurus Rex. Today we talked about philosophy versus politics. Used Star Trek as a jumping off point. The fact that Star Trek, while it has dealt with political issues, it ultimately adhered and pushed for a philosophical ideal that we needed to go to, that we needed to strive for. It didn't stop, and in doing so, it actually hit and was able to speak to a broader community. You didn't worry about alienating people, as well as the fact that you didn't sink it down to one particular issue. You allowed them to question it and know themselves. Secondly, we then talked about how that's important to do in our regular life, and I brought up the example about how, as a Christian, I believe everyone has inherent value because of the imago Dei, and they do not forfeit or sacrifice that value just because they do things, because ultimately Jesus died for them in the same way that he died for me and people who may not have done something that we could all readily, condemn. So I am the Theosaurus Rex, and you can find me a lot of places, really. You can find me on Facebook /Theosaurus Rex. You can find me on Twitter at Theosaurus Rex. You can find me on YouTube, which is probably where you saw this one, at Theosaurus Rex. And not to be confused with Thesaurus Rex. Theosaurus. Theosaurus. I think. I really didn't think this through, if we're going to be honest. I mean, I thought it sounded really cool because it's like, oh, it's like a theology. Theology-saurus. Let me condense. Anyway. Thank you for checking me out. And I hope that you have a great day. I don't know. Okay, bye-bye.